Cold Case, an Angelica Dale Mystery by P.K. Armstrong. Chapter 15. I had finished interviewing Frank by late afternoon and loaded up the evidence box in my car. I could barely contain my excitement. To have all the police evidence, and Frank assured me it was all there, for a cold case from over 40 years old was unheard of. But there it was, sitting on my back seat like a ticking time bomb that could potentially blow my whole case wide open. It wasn't just the evidence box. After speaking with Frank, I had a new focus to my investigation. It may take some proving, for I now suspected Stormie was right about the affair, but she had the wrong woman. It was Sasha having the affair with Derek, not Bailey. The incomplete thought I had started when I interviewed Stormie came full circle. Derek was ambitious, and it seemed that Sasha was the woman he would want to be with, the woman who was smart enough to get him what he wanted. The change in the dynamic, plus the fact that Sasha survived the fire for a few days, had my mind struggling to reorganize. I would head back to the house and review the contents of the box. I pulled into the drive to make it easier to unload, and at the same time the garage door opened to reveal Daniel and Jacob. They both looked up and walked towards me as I exited the car. "Hi, guys. I'm not parking here. I just have a box to unload," I said congenially. "I'll get it," they both shouted at the same time. There was a brief playful shoving match before Jacob relented and allowed Daniel to open the passenger side back door to grab the box. "How is your investigation going?" Ever curious, Jacob asked as we followed Daniel into the house. "So far, good. I interviewed a retired detective who worked the case." "It was illuminating," I said with a wink. "He had all the old police files." I gestured with my head towards where Daniel had disappeared down the hallway. "Nice," Jacob said with excitement. "Can I look?" We had made the way to my little office where Daniel had set the box down on the table and was tweaking a new monitor. "What are you guys doing home in the middle of the day?" "Working from home," they both said in unison. "In the garage?" I asked skeptically. Daniel answered, "Jacob said he set up some crime scene software on your laptop. I remembered I had an extra 27-inch monitor." He pointed at the newly installed peripheral. "Wow, thanks," I said, genuinely touched Christopher's brothers wanted to help me. "So, can we look in the box?" Jacob asked again, and then, "What?" in response to a playful swat from Daniel. "If she doesn't want to show me, she will just tell me." "Well," I said slowly with a lazy smile, "I wouldn't want to disrupt your work." "We're on a break." They both looked at me expectantly. I chuckled and moved to open the box. I opened the file folder I'd seen earlier and noted the reports of the first officers on scene. I would return to the file later, perhaps some bedtime reading, for as I looked up, I could see Daniel holding a manila envelope marked pager. He stared at me, his eyebrows elevated and his teeth clenched together as if he would explode from the excitement. "Go ahead," I said. Jacob raised his hand. "Wait, shouldn't he open the envelope a certain way? I saw it on TV." I shook my head at his naivety. "If we were going to use it in court, yes, but this is not going to court. It's already been adjudicated, and nothing is going to come of this except giving a sick woman peace of mind. Besides, if we were going to get the police involved, do you really think I would let you guys into this box?" His smile slipped, and I took pity on him and smiled tenderly. "But it was a good question. Thanks for checking with me first." Jacob's smile returned, and he moved closer to Daniel, who was already opening the envelope. The little pager slid into his hand. "No way! I can't believe this survived the fire!" Daniel shouted. "Did it? Survive, I mean?" Daniel held the pager up to the light and turned it around in his hand. "There's lots of soot and debris, but the outer casing is still intact. It's a Toku, mid or late 80s alphanumeric pager." I looked through the labels on the envelopes and through several file folders, but found no printout of the data on the pager. Not surprising. I wouldn't be shocked if they hadn't even bothered pulling the data. I looked at Daniel. "Can you get data off of it?" I asked eagerly. My buddy Greg built an alphanumeric pager decoder program in college. I might have to tweak it a little bit, but it might work. I'll check with him and see if he still has it. Oh, Daniel? I know. I won't tell him whose pager it is or why I'm asking. He grinned at me, turned, and exited the room. I laughed. He was even more excited than I was. The pager is important? Jacob was forever curious. Uh-huh. I suspect an intimate relationship between two of the victims. The information from the pager could go a long way toward proving it. I pulled another envelope and opened it and slid its contents onto the desk. Pictures! Jacob shouted. Negatives, I corrected him. I thought for a moment. I didn't want to walk into the local drugstore and see if they would process the photos for me. I could call the coroner or the police department and see if they had a vendor. I glanced up and saw Jacob staring at me with a smile. You're trying to figure out how to get pictures from those negatives, aren't you? I nodded. I'd like to keep it quiet. Jacob was practically dancing in anticipation. I have a program and a flatbed in my closet. I can use it to print the images. He collected the smaller envelopes and turned and rushed out of the room. Hey, I don't think I should be interrupting your work, I yelled to his departing figure. You're not, he shouted back, and I laughed as I listened to his feet pound up the stairs. With the pager and the negatives disseminated, I was left with some small evidence bags with the location where they were found in the burnt-out building and the date they were collected. Most were scorched, and I was soon able to match the item with the corresponding lab report. I looked at the clock, shocked at how late it was. An idea struck me, and I made my way to the kitchen. Sandy had not left anything out for dinner. Checking the refrigerator and pantry, I decided I would earn my keep and cook dinner. Daniel and Jacob had been in their room for an hour or so when the smell of chicken reached them. I had decided on a chopped salad filled with tomato, cucumber, red onion, avocado, and olives, dressed with a light lemon vinaigrette, garlic and herb air-fried chicken, and a nutty rice pilaf. Sandy had plenty of peach cobbler, so I thought that would do for dessert. You made dinner. Daniel was the first to be seduced by the smells from the kitchen. Why? Sometimes cooking and cleaning relaxes me and helps me clear my mind. I plan to look over the files and evidence after dinner, and I want to be able to focus and plan my next moves. He watched me for a moment as I cleaned up the food scraps and loaded the dishwasher. He had washed his hands and reached up for the plates as Jacob came down the stairs. Oh, Angel, you should live here all the time, he wiggled his eyebrows. Jacob, make yourself useful and make sure the table is clear, you goofball. Daniel threw a kitchen towel at him. Got it. Jacob darted off. He has a lot of energy, I said frankly. Daniel rolled his eyes. You should take him on your run in the mornings. Maybe it will mellow him out. I smiled at him and finished the last of the utensils when Sandy entered the kitchen. Angel, you didn't have to cook. She looked at the chicken, the salad, and the rice. But I'm glad you did. This looks delicious. She paused as her two sons came into the kitchen. Table is set, Jacob said and hugged his mom. Hi, son. She kissed him and then turned and swatted Daniel lovingly on his arm. Daniel shoved Jacob out of the way and hugged his mom, encircling her in his arms. How did you get the boys to set the table? Sandy asked, laughing at her son's antics. I shrugged. They just did. Chuck came home 20 minutes later, and after he washed up, they sat down to dinner. Having only been with them for 3 days, it was amazing to me how dinner with the Rolands was always animated. Maybe it was just because they were natural-born storytellers, but there was always something interesting to discuss and opinions to express. The fact that Chuck and Sandy had 3 boys probably meant inevitable drama. I, on the other hand, had plenty of playtime with my mom and dad as a child. We laughed often and had great family vacations, but I and my family were a bit on the serious side. I didn't think my upbringing was better, just different, and I enjoyed the aura generated by the Roland family. So, Angel, any updates? Chuck asked. I nodded while swallowing my last bite. My interview of the detective who worked on the case was great. Well, I say detective, but basically he was a new detective and was assigned a lot of grunt work. But he didn't think the lead detective handled things right. and I have to say his reasoning was sound. Is that where you got the evidence from? Daniel asked, his fork paused halfway between his plate and mouth. Yes, he reviewed it every now and again, and then one day no one cared about the evidence any longer, so he kept it. Well, he must have thought it would be of use since he gave it to you, Sandy concluded. I looked directly from Daniel to Jacob, my eyes wide and eyebrows raised. Sandy looked from the boys and back to me again. Boys, what have you been up to? She asked slowly, her eyes a little wide with trepidation. Nothing, Jacob said. We've been helping is all. He looked innocently at his mom and bit into a piece of chicken. He chewed and then grinned at Angel. This is delicious, he laughed. Daniel, do you have anything to add? Chuck asked. Daniel laughed. The chicken is good. Daniel? Sandy raised her voice and looked exasperatingly at me as she realized the chuckles she was hearing actually belonged to Chuck. Babe, you are not helping. They are going to interrupt Angel's work, she tutted at her husband. I decided to give the boys a helping hand and touched Sandy's arm to slow her chastisement. Sandy, they are really helping. There was an old pager, and Daniel is seeing if he can get the data from it, and there were negatives, and Jacob thought he could help develop them. This way, we can keep the investigation in the family, and I don't have to bring in outside consultants. See, Mom? We're consultants, Jacob said with a waggle of his head. We all laughed and started on our peach cobbler. I had decided to have my after-dinner coffee in my room so I could talk to Violet and then review the papers from the evidence box. Frank was right. The detectives didn't do a lot of background work on the victims of the fire. There were, however, reports from their initial sweep of the scene after the fire department released the building. The arson's investigator report stated that the office seemed to have more damage than the rest of the building and was possibly the fire's point of origin. It was clear where Derek's body was found, the filing cabinets were turned over and scorched. An idea occurred to me, and I searched the folder for the forensic examination of the office. It was enlightening. Traces of oil accelerant were not only found pooled near Derek's body in the office, but specifically drops were located where the file cabinets stood before they were toppled over. The narrow trail of accelerant was continued out of the office and down the hall, out into the main room, up to the bar where another body was located. Sitting in the big comfortable chair, the lamp created a deceptively warm glow, but the chill of the night had cooled the air. I paused and donned a sweatshirt and thick socks, curled back in the chair, and poured more coffee from a thermos Sandy had filled for me before I began reading again. This did not sound in the heat of the moment to me. I could picture a fight, Derek being killed, and alcohol, which surely would have been on hand, being poured over the scene to ensure evidence was destroyed. But oil? I looked at the accompanying lab report, which confirmed it was range oil. I scanned the documents and found what I was looking for. A mini oil-burning stove was found in the fire remnants near the kitchenette. It was probably used to make appetizers, which was the only type of food served at Aspen Club. But a big question is, what was the oil doing in the office? If Stormy had used the oil to start the fire, wouldn't one of the employees have seen her remove it from the kitchen storage? The reports led me from the office down the hallway to the bar area. I looked back at the police file, which identified the body of Corey Rowe, the bartender, having been found behind the bar. This struck me as odd. I had assumed the bodies were found near or en route to the emergency exits. I stirred my coffee absent-mindedly and contemplated the new information. I wonder where the other bodies were found. I scoured the reports and made note of where each body was found. Derek was found in the office, Corey Rowe behind the bar, and Bailey in the middle of the dance floor. A special note, only Sasha was near a fire exit. My mind started organizing mental sticky notes into place. The location of bodies was a detail that would shed light on what happened the night of the fire. I closed the file and made a mental note to ask Jacob to add the location of the bodies to the crime scene diagram. The wind still whistled a lullaby outside the window. The house was quiet and the room cozy. I closed the files and put them in a neat pile on the edge of the dresser. I needed a good night's sleep. I moved to the bed and curled up under the down blanket and was asleep almost instantly.